Hello everybody, welcome back. KurTecH here, and in this video we're going to set up an IRL streaming system. This video is going to have 4 parts to it. The first part's going to be assembling the hardware. The second's going to be installing Belabox to that hardware. The third is going to be setting up an Azure Linux VM working as an SRTLA relay. And then the fourth is going to be hooking everything up to the battery pack, tethering it to my cell phone, and watching it connect. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so part 1 of this video is going to be setting up all of the hardware. I'm going to run through everything we're going to use here and then assemble it. Starting with the Orange Pi 5 Plus. This is the new board that has the HDMI input as well as 2 HDMI outputs. It's got 2 Ethernet, some USB, and then we're actually going to be using this socket right here, which is the eMMC, and that's this. So it's just a little SSD that we're plugging in. This is a 256 gig eMMC. We're going to use micro SD to install the OS to the eMMC. And then I have a metal case for the Orange Pi 5 Plus. And this metal case has active cooling, which is nice. So we've got the fan and the case itself. I already put the little rubber feet on it when I opened it, but we'll go ahead and get that installed. I've got the GoPro Hero 10 Black Edition. This has got the Media Mod case to it, which also has the HDMI output right there. And then I'm using the little battery pack stand to give it a little extra battery life. That works really well. Then we've got micro HDMI to regular HDMI, USB-C with an adapter to tether my phone, USB-C to hook up to this 30,000 milliamp power bank, and then optionally you can use a DJI mic system. I love this thing. It works extremely well. You can be 100 yards plus away from the receiver and it's crystal clear. You got 2 of them and they can hook up a little lavalier mic to it. So we've got that with the cable to connect it. Now you can hook up the DJI mic to the GoPro. It has a line in on the GoPro, or you can hook it up directly to the board right here with the analog audio input. That's how I'm going to do it. Alright, let's go ahead and get started in the assembly here. First thing we're going to do actually is install the eMMC. It looks like a giant SIM card with the little notch on the side. And the plugs underneath it have different sizes to them. So one is slightly larger than the other so that it only goes in one way. But just as a little shortcut, the little notch here points up this way. So up away from the HDMI and Ethernet ports. So you basically just drop it on the board. It'll kind of find its place there. Then you have to press firmly on both sides and you should hear 2 clicks right here. There we go. Both sides of that are now snapped in and the eMMC is ready to install. Well, ready to be installed onto. Okay. Then we're just going to slide the board into the case, line up the little mount points, use my trusty little electric screwdriver here. Love this thing. Okay, nice handy little light on it. Alright, let's get the board installed into the case. And that's it, just those 4 screws. I'm going to check the torque on them real quick. The screwdriver does a pretty decent job at tightening them. I just like to make sure they're nice and snug. Alright, Next thing we're going to do is install the fan. So these got two little wires there, a red and a black one. You can actually see on the board here, it's got this row of headers, these pins, and we're going to install it to this second and third one on the outside most part. I think it's even red and black on the board itself. So let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, then it should look something like that. There we go. So you can see I'm skipping the first pin, installing to the second and third one, red and black. Then we'll go ahead and screw the case together. This screwdriver works really nice. It has this little torque feature. There we go. And it stops once it's torqued in enough. Normally you should start these by hand so you don't cross thread anything, but they're not too picky. And sometimes they can be kind of hard to start because of that powder coating they have on the metal itself. Gets into the threads a little bit, so these are actually going pretty well. I think one of them was just a little bit difficult, but that's it. All right, let's double check the torque on these. Again, the screwdriver did pretty decent, but I like it to be extra tight if it's going to be in some kind of case or a bag bouncing around. No need for those to fall out and short something out. There we go. The case is now installed. We're ready to go. So that's it. That's the hardware side of it. Part 2 is going to be installation of Belabox onto this device. We're going to use the SD card, and then it's going to install it onto the eMMC. So for part 2 of this video, we're going to go ahead and install Belabox onto the Orange Pi 5 Plus. So to do this, you're going to need two things. First is the installation files for Belabox. You can actually Google Belabox Orange Pi 5 Plus. The first result will be Belabox for Rock Chip RK3588. That's the chip that the Orange Pi 5 Plus uses. You can see that board here. So there's two ways to do this. One is you can use the image file and boot directly from your micro SD card. That's if you don't have an eMMC, but since we installed an eMMC in this Orange Pi, I'm going to go ahead and use the eMMC installer. And they actually recommend that you use an eMMC anyways. So let's go ahead and download the installer image. And we're going to need a tool called Belabox Etcher in order to flash the micro SD card. So just Google Belabox Etcher, all one word. The first result you should see should look something like this. Go ahead and download for Windows. Alright. So once that download is complete, you want to install Belabox Etcher. And once it's installed, it should look something like so. So now we're going to flash from a file, and this is the image file that was contained in the zip file we just downloaded. So this is the Belabox image file. And again, this is the installer. And then I plugged my micro SD card in. You can see it's 32 gigs. So we're going to select that, and we're going to go ahead and flash. So this takes a little while. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here, and I'll resume it once this is complete. It needs to flash it completely and then verify the flash. So I'll be right back. Alright, the flash has completed. and you should see this screen. So now we're going to remove the SD card from the computer, and we're going to plug it in to the Orange Pi. So you can see right here is the SD card slot. We're going to just plug the micro SD card right in. And now I'm going to connect it up. I've got an HDMI cable here that I'm going to switch over to on the monitor. I'm going to plug it into the one closest to the Ethernet. Those first two are HDMI outs, and of course the one closest to the USB is HDMI in. I have a KVM that I can hook the keyboard up to. There we go. And then I'm going to hardwire it into the network. There we go. And now all I need is the power plug. Any USB-C cable will work just fine. I have it plugged into a cell phone charger in the wall. So I'm going to switch over to the HDMI, and then we'll watch the installation continue. Alright. So now I'm going to plug the USB-C cable in to the USB-C port right next to the Ethernet. The fan kicks on, so you know that's wired in correctly. And then you should see the LED lights come on. Alright. So now you can see that it picked up the installer on the SD card. And it's saying this will overwrite the eMMC storage. It also states on my screen that there's an existing Belabox detected on the eMMC. That's perfectly fine. I was testing around with other installs previously. So it says you have 60 seconds to unplug the power cable if you do not wish to proceed. We're going to leave it alone, and you'll see the installation continue. And again, this is without using any kind of keyboard input. It automatically detects the installer on the SD card. It detects the eMMC has been installed, and then it should just install successfully from there. Alright, there you go. Installation is starting. Copying the files to the eMMC. And this really doesn't take that long, so just another minute or so and it should be complete. Alright, it's now complete, and it's going to go ahead and shut down. Just give it 10 seconds here. Okay, and it just shut down. So now all we need to do, unplug the power, and then I'm going to remove the SD card from it. There we go. So the micro SD has been removed. Then I'm just going to plug the power right back in. Just like so. And now it should boot Belabox from the eMMC. There we go. You can see it booting up. Starting all the network services. Okay. And it picked up an IP address. 192.168.1.85. So we're going to use that IP address. I'm going to switch back over to my other monitor. There we go. Go ahead and close that. Okay. Alright. So now here we're going to go 192.168.1.85. And you see the Belabox web page. I'm going to set a password. There we go. Okay, so it does state that there's an update available. We might as well run that. and it's going to go ahead and do its update. And that's pretty much it. Belabox is installed on the Orange Pi 5 Plus. Now we're going to move over to setting up the SRTLA relay within Azure. Alright, for part 3 of this video, we're going to set up the SRTLA relay transcoder, and we're going to do this in Azure. So let me just bring over my Azure. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and create a new virtual machine. Just create new virtual machine. Okay. And I'm going to hide the subscription details there. Okay, so for this, we're going to create a new resource group. So let me just bring it down enough for you to see that. There we go. So create new resource group, and I'm going to call it SRT relay underscore RG1. There we go. And then we're going to scroll through here, name it SRT relay. Choose US East. Zone 1 is fine. And we want to use 2204 Ubuntu. And I'm going to pick the cheapest VM I can. There we go. And I'm going to use a username and password. It's going to be SRT user. Okay. And then this is going to be a unique password. There we go. Okay. Let me adjust the window a little bit here. Alright, then we're going to move over to the disks. The system disk should be fine. Not going to make any changes here. I'll hit networking. Okay, so in this area we want to just use the defaults again. And I'm doing a public IP address, leaving open SSH. I'm going to delete the IP address when I delete the VM. And review and create. Okay, so I had to scroll past my personal information. So this is essentially everything that we're setting up. And we're going to go ahead and hit create. Alright, I'm going to move that over while it creates it. And you can see that Belabox has ran the updates on the device that we selected in part 2. Okay. Alright. So I don't think this has any personal information. Looks good. Now I'm going to go to the resource. Just gotta hide that for a second. There we go. Okay, so the part that we want here is this, the public IP address. So I'm going to copy that public IP address. And then I'm going to open PowerShell. Okay. So now we want to, let's see, I can zoom that in. There we go. Make it so you can see everything. There we go. All right, so we're going to SSH as SRT user at the public IP address. Yes. Okay. Use the password and we're in. All right. So I have a bunch of commands here that I'm going to want to run. And I'll bring those over right now so you can see them. So the first command is going to be installing all of the tools that we need to make this work. And I'm going to do everything as sudo instead of switching to root user. So there we go. And I'll put all these commands in the description of the video. So it's going to install all the dependencies that we need to make this work. Should only take a minute or so. And now that we have the public IP address, we no longer need Azure open, so I'm going to move that out of the way. All right. Okay. Now the next command we're going to run is sudo apt update. This is just going to make sure all the stuff we installed is up to date, including the OS. So what that does is that looks for the updates, and then we have to run the sudo apt upgrade to install them. Hit yes. Now it's installing all the updates that it found. And you can actually do this on a virtual machine on your home network as long as you forward the proper ports through your firewall. We actually have to do the same port forwarding through Azure, which we're going to get to once this installation is complete. Alright, so now the next thing we're going to do is get this from GitHub. So this is the Belabox version of SRTLA. Just hit enter. Okay. And you can see that it created an SRTLA directory. Let's change to that. Now sudo make. Okay. Now we want to get the SRT GitHub. So we're going to paste that here. Again, Belabox SRT. Boom. This one's a little bit bigger. Okay, now we'll see there's another directory, SRT, so let's change to that. So here we're going to sudo configure. Alright, looks like that worked. Now we're going to sudo make. And this one takes a little bit longer. Alright, once that is complete, the SRT relay has been installed, and we should be able to start the application. So this is the command that I use to start the SRT live transmit application. You can look up the details on exactly what all of this does, but basically it sets the listener mode, your TTL, latency, and the way it does binding of different connections. It'll set its receiver, which is what we need for Belabox to connect to it, to port 5000. And then the listeners can connect to port 5001. So once this is complete, I'm going to copy this, and you can see it installed to home SRT user, SRT, SRT live transmit. So we're in the SRT folder right now. And you can see it created a bunch of different files and directories. And you see the SRT live transmit. That's actually what we want to run. So I'm just going to move back out of this directory, copy this command, and paste it here. Alright, so it's running. Now the interesting thing is if we move over to Belabox, which I believe is sitting right there, we should be able to set our encoder as a test pattern, so we don't need to hook anything up yet. And then this is the SRTLA information that we need. Alright, so now we have the public IP address that we're going to paste in here. Just going to move this over real quick. Paste that, and the port is 5000. I'm only moving it out of the way because of my personal information pops up when I try to enter stuff in here, the autocomplete. I hate that. Okay, so we have the public address of the Linux VM we just created, and that's the same address we SSH'd into to run these commands through PowerShell. And we have the port 5000, which is also called out here as the listening port. And you can see the receiver at 5000. All right. So now we should be able to start it, and you'll notice it'll attempt to start, but it will fail to connect. And we'll give it a minute here. And I've actually had luck rebooting the Belabox after all of the updates. I've had this happen before as well, and that's totally normal. So let's go ahead and refresh that. Okay. Make sure our encoder is still set to pattern. Relay server. Let me paste that information back in here real quick. There we go. So we've got the public IP, the port, and let's start it. Okay, so it attempted to start, but you'll notice it's failing to connect. So now we have to come back in to our virtual machine here, and we have to hit network settings. There we go. And now under network settings, we're going to scroll down until we see the firewall. Now we want to create a new inbound port rule. And this is going to be source any, source port all, destination any, service custom, and port 5000. And it should just automatically name it. So this is going to allow port 5000 to connect through the public IP address to this SRTLA relay. So you'll see once we hit add here, it successfully added it. Now we'll give it a minute, and it should connect. And when it connects, the Linux server will actually show an active connection down here. And it takes a little while for those firewall rules to apply. So we'll give it a minute. Okay. Let's just make sure. Port 5000. Inbound port rule. Okay, that is right. And sometimes it actually helps to reboot the VM. So we'll give it a minute to see if it picks up. Okay. There we go. You can see it just accepted the connection here. And now it's transmitting the test pattern. Perfect. So now Belabox is communicating with the SRT relay. So now we should be able to open VLC player, go to media, open network stream. Okay, and then we're going to call this SRT, and then I'm going to paste in the public IP, and we're going to give it port 5001. All right, and play. So now VLC is attempting to connect to this VM. But again, it's going to fail because it needs a firewall port opened. So we're going to create an inbound port rule for port 5001, any allow, add. Okay. I'm going to mute this because when it finally connects, it has this loud, high-pitched tone as part of the test pattern. I don't love that, but it is what it is. Okay, so now we have 5001 and 5000. Both of those ports are open on the VM. That should be all we need from Azure, so I'm going to move that back out of the way. And again, it takes a couple minutes for those firewall rules to apply, so we'll just kind of hang out. But at least now we know the Belabox is communicating to the Linux server in Azure, and that's what it's telling us here. All right. And then once the firewall ports apply for 5001, then the player will connect and it will show us the player connected. Right now it's losing all of the bytes it's trying to send because nothing is consuming it. Once the player connects, you'll see that those bytes are actually getting consumed. There we go. Target connection, boom. And this is it. So now what we want to do is hook up the HDMI. What we're going to do here is open up the port on the back of the GoPro. Get this cable unwound. All right. Okay, so the micro HDMI plugs into the back of the GoPro. And we'll set this up like so. And we'll have it face the Belabox. Okay. And then we're going to take the HDMI cable and we're going to plug it in the back of the Belabox. Now the HDMI in is the one closest to the USB. So you see there's 3 ports back there. See if I can get a little space here. There we go. So I'm going to plug it into that 3rd port. Just like so. Alright. Now I no longer need the HDMI out. We're hooked up through SSH. That's no longer needed. Okay. And I no longer need the keyboard and mouse, so I'm going to unplug that as well. So now we have HDMI in, Ethernet, and power. I'm going to go ahead and power on the GoPro. And it should tell us by the front that it's hooked up to HDMI there. And that's right, if you can see that. Well, trust me when it says HDMI. There we go, whatever. Okay. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to stop the test pattern. You can see it disconnected, and the video actually froze. You can see from the fuzzies in the background are no longer moving. Now, if we go into the encoder settings and pick 4K 30 frames a second, and of course the audio, for some reason the GoPro has issues sending audio consistently. I'm not sure why. I haven't had that issue with any other device. But every once in a while it'll say HDMI not available, and then you have to go with like analog in. That's why I have the trusty DJI mic set up, because you can just plug this right into analog in and it works perfectly every time. But for now we're going to use the audio on the GoPro since it looks like it's connecting just fine. So setting the transcoder, or I'm sorry, the encoder settings to HDMI 4K 30, and we should be able to hit start. It looks like it accepted the new connection, and there we go. We are up and running. So you can see this is coming from the GoPro. Now there's going to be a little bit of a delay because it's pushing it up to Azure, back down to VLC, and there's a built-in latency to that. So everything seems to be working. The Azure Linux box is accepting the signals from both the Belabox and VLC, and it's transcoding it to SRT from SRTLA. Everything looks great. So we're up and running. Okay, so for part 4 of this video, we're going to go ahead and tether our smartphone. We're going to use the USB-C cable. I have an iPhone 15. All right. There we go. Got the adapter plugged in. I'm going to plug it in down here. The first USB port. And then I should be able to open personal hotspot on my phone and plug it in. All right, so it's going to ask me if I trust this device. I'm going to say yes, trust. Okay, so now my device is trusted without doing anything. It just connected and it starts sending data over that connection. So what's interesting about this, now that you see the IP address, and I want to record that IP address as well, because I'm going to have to use that IP address on my phone browser to access the Belabox webpage. Okay, so let's just copy that over here real quick. 172.20.10.4. Okay. Now, if we go back to the desk cam, I can actually disconnect the Ethernet now completely. So now the only network connection it has is through my phone being tethered as a hotspot. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the power cable and then plug it in to the power bank. We're going to go ahead and, oh, that's right, I have to do this on my phone now. So if I go to the browser on my phone, 172.20.10.4, you can see the Belabox website is now available on my phone. Let me enter the password. Okay. All right, so you can see it's running there. We can stop it, go to System, and power off. Now it should show you at the top that it's disconnecting and powering off. All right. And it looks like everything is just stopped. The fan will still run until you unplug the power, but it's no longer connected to the Unix box. So I'm just going to unplug that power. All right, so now the only cables we have going into the Belabox right now are the cable from the GoPro, right here, and the cable from my phone. Okay, so we're going to use this USB cable, USB-C. We're going to plug it in to the output of the power bank, and then the back of the unit. And you can see it powered back up. The lights are lit up. And you can see that it's showing power consumption on the power bank right now. And this should last several hours on that power bank. So now, just so you can tell, there's no other cables going to this. That's it. So now I should be able to log in to Belabox. Okay. So now Belabox is connected. Make sure the GoPro is on and HDMI. And now, for some reason it says HDMI issues. It says that every once in a while. And here we go. Audio input HDMI is unavailable. That's what I was talking about before. And it won't start streaming until that's available. So we can try unplugging this powering this off. Okay. Plugging it back in and powering it back on. Okay. Now we go to encoder settings. And you see HDMI audio unavailable. I hate that it does that. And it has this weird refresh going on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to probably reduce the size. There we go. And I'm going to pick this HDMI audio and say analog in. So by picking the audio to analog in from HDMI, again, if we pick this, you'll see HDMI unavailable. Whatever reason it does that, I don't know. And it's only the GoPro that seems to do that. So now we can pick that, hit start, and you can see a whole bunch of data transmitting. We can close this because we're no longer connected to our network. So this is using a hotspot IP address from the cell phone. And it reconnected to the Linux box. And it reconnected to VLC. So now I could jump in my car with this setup and go wherever I have cellular signal. And this is my IRL setup. So just to complete this, I might as well set this up real quick. So we've got the DJI receiver and we've got the mic. So what I can do now is just plug the receiver output into input right here. That's it. So now this DJI audio, I can clip this right in my shirt and I'm good to go. I can move the camera anywhere I want to move it, just like so. And it doesn't matter because I'm not facing the microphone. So when I'm holding it, pointing it away, like let's say I want to go to the soccer field and fly some RC planes, which is going to be one of my streams coming up. I don't have to worry about having the microphone pick up my voice on the GoPro. I just use the DJI mic. Works perfect every time. And there's even a little fuzzy cap you can put on there. I like the lavalier mic, so I can throw this in my pocket and just have the little lavalier mic clip on there. Everything works perfect. So that's it. We've got Belabox installed on an Orange Pi 5 Plus. We got a GoPro without audio, but I knew that was going to happen. We have the power bank powering everything. And we have the phone hotspotting. So I wrap this up in a backpack, have this cable follow me anywhere I want to point it. We live. It's perfect. Works great. All right, so that's the demo. Belabox on an Orange Pi 5 Plus connected to an Azure hosted Linux server working as the SRTLA receiver and transcoder, transcoding it to SRT, which then feeds it back to VLC, which then I can use the SRT feed into Streamlabs or VLC and just share the screen or the application window, and I can pretty much go IRL from there. If you guys have any questions about how any of this is set up, let me know. By no means am I a Linux guru. I know enough to be dangerous. Yeah, it seems to work really well. So that's it. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video, drop a like, make sure you subscribe, hit that little reminder so you know the next time a video pops up, and we'll see you on the next one.